Hi everyone, welcome to week 3 of Lit 215. So this week our theme is love, and we're going to focus on a few poems and then some short stories in our readings this week. We're also going to talk about the first major assignment for our literary project, which is your project proposal. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so your readings for this week, a little bit of a longer list, but 2 of them are quite short. You've got the Jukebox Love Song by Langston Hughes. Many of you probably know Langston Hughes, A Raisin in the Sun, or maybe some of his other work from high school. So it's interesting to look at his piece and compare it to Angela de Hoyos, who wrote the pieces and When Your Eyes Speak. So some similarities between the 2 artists, but also some differences. And then the short stories this week, we have Finding a Wife by Gary Soto, A Wife Story by Bharati Mukherjee, and then I Am a Homosexual Mom by Binyavanga Wainaina, who is a Kenyan writer. So a lot of variety this week, not just in time periods, like Langston Hughes' pieces from the 30s, whereas A Wife Story is from the 80s, but also in terms of cultural, ethnic background, in terms of gender, in terms of sexuality. All of these sort of impact how we view love and relationships and marriage. So that's sort of what our discussion is going to be centered around this week. So your reading reflection is going to be due on Wednesday based on these pieces. So I'm noticing some really good stuff in your reading reflection so far, a lot of connections to your personal life, a lot of connections between the readings. And I want to encourage you guys to mention not just one reading that stuck out to you, but make sure that you're kind of discussing all of the readings under each theme so that I can get a sense for the depth that you're reading at and make sure that you don't focus on just one of the pieces. So questions to consider as we're going with this theme of love. First of all, I think it's interesting to look at who defines who and how we love. And I think this is a question that people have been, contemplating for millennia. And love is a very popular literary topic, and not just the positives of love, finding love, getting married, starting new relationships, but also the negatives, the breakups, the heartbreak, the grief, the loss. Then also, how do different Americans view marriage and why? So we'll look at A Wife Story, where the main character, Hannah, is married to a man who lives in India, and the role of, she sees herself as a wife, her role sort of changed. And so it's interesting to think about how that fits into the stereotypical American view of marriage. A husband and wife, 2.5 kids, white picket fence, what that American dream as a marriage should look like. Then also, I want you guys to think this week about gender roles. This is something we see in A Wife Story. We also see this a little bit in Finding a Wife. And then also in the first poem, in Langston Hughes' poem, it's definitely from the perspective of a male protagonist, sort of personifying the city of Harlem, but also in thinking about like the role that men play in relationships. And then how do these different stories just discuss love in general? And I think that this can be wider than just love for a romantic partner. I think this could be familial love. I think it can be friend love, friendship, love for country, love for self. So although a lot of our discussion might center around marriage and romantic relationships, I also want you guys to think about, self-love and friendship and those other forms of love that we have not only within but between groups. So that's what our discussion this week is going to focus on. Consider answering these questions in your reflections. I think this can be really great jumping off points for those reflections. So the other aspect of our course I wanted to discuss is what I'm calling our inquiry-based literary project. So this is what the majority of Lit 215 is going to focus on. So in your syllabus, you should have read over the project description, but there is also a more detailed description under our week 3 folder on Blackboard. So pause, go read that. It'll walk you through all of the finer points of the project. But essentially what we are doing is we're picking a topic, and then you're going to make a question based on that topic. And then you're going to use different readings, different pieces of literature to kind of answer your question. So the first thing I'd like you to do is kind of read that description of the project. There are some suggestions of themes you could pick. You could pick a theme from our text. You could choose a specific author and focus thematically on an author. You could focus on a group of authors. Then you're going to use readings to answer a question about your theme. So you don't have to have your readings decided just yet, but the rest of our class will focus on finding readings that focus under your theme, analyzing them, and then essentially bringing that all together, culminating in a kind of end of semester project. So at the end of the semester, you'll present what you've learned either in an analysis essay, a poster or a visual, a video, a PowerPoint, or your own original literary piece. So I have had students choose all of these options in the past. There is no one that is better than the other, although I will say I think the easiest is a PowerPoint, and so those I can be very critical on. The others, like a poster, a literary piece, an analysis essay, that takes a lot of critical thinking, and not that PowerPoints don't, but I do have a comm media background, and I have very high expectations of what a PowerPoint should be. So just keep that in mind. I've had plenty of students choose them and do very well. So the project is essentially just focusing on something in multicultural literature. So let's talk about choosing a theme. I want you guys to consider themes that you know, something you care about, and something other people will care about too. So like I said before, start with our textbook. Do one of the themes in our text really stand out to you? So for me, say I kind of looking through our table of contents, and I think the society, conflict, struggle, and change section is interesting. I tend to gravitate towards stories of conflict and change. And so maybe I'd want to kind of pick something in that theme. And maybe I have actually a deep interest in Native American literature. So maybe I would want to focus on Native American literature, but underneath the umbrella of conflict and change. So that's just me personally, but what you're interested in and what you're looking to do is going to be different. So think about what you know already, and then what are you interested in knowing more about? But don't forget, this is a literary project, so your main focus is on literature. I have had students choose broader concepts and then have a difficult time narrowing that down into literature. So start with one of the stories, start with an author, start with a theme, and then we're going to work our way from there. What is due this week in terms of our project is a proposal. So essentially what you're going to do, read the assignment sheet that's on Blackboard, and then you're going to just write 2 to 3 pages that answer the questions you have here. So what theme have you chosen and why? What question will you be answering in your project? There are examples of questions in the assignment sheet, just to give you an idea. What readings do you plan to look for? So for example, if I was going to go with my Native American theme under society, conflict, and change, maybe I would say I'm going to look for readings by Native American authors, maybe from a variety of historical standpoints, and that focus on a theme of change or conflict. So it can be general, or maybe I've already got an artist in mind. I know Sherman Alexie is a very prolific Native American author, so maybe I would look for him first. And then I'm going to talk about what I would present my findings with. I am a writer. I love analyzing, so maybe I'll go with the analytical essay. Whew, tripping over my words today. The proposal is essentially just a plan for your project. It can change. So if you're feeling like, oh my God, I have to choose this theme and this question and it's got to be perfect, it doesn't. It can just be a starting point. And if you need to adjust, we will. So just keep in mind as you go, your theme, your question, your focus can change, and it probably will. But this is just the jumping off point. All right. So good luck with this first major assignment. I'm really excited to see what you guys decide for your projects, and I will talk to you soon.